What if the way you dressed determined how you were treated? What if a single assumption, based on nothing more than worn jeans and a baseball cap, caused someone to dismiss you entirely? When Keanu Reeves stepped into an exclusive luxury watch boutique, he wasn't looking for special treatment. He wasn't there to flaunt wealth or demand attention. He was simply curious. But the moment he asked to see a high-end timepiece, the sales associate's polite mask slipped, replaced by thinly veiled condescension. A man dressed like that? Inquiring about a $300,000 watch? Surely, he didn't belong. But what happens when the customer you've just dismissed is someone who could buy every watch in the store without blinking? And more importantly, what happens when they decide not to? Before we continue this story, let us know where you're watching from. If you like stories like this, subscribe to the channel, because tomorrow we have another special story for you. Keanu Reeves step off the busy city street and into the grand entrance of a high-end watch store called Aram. The storefront alone radiated status. Impeccable glass doors framed by delicate gold accents, a polished brass handle that gleamed in the sunlight, and an understated sign overhead. If one didn't already feel intimidated by the display, the hushed interior was sure to seal the deal. Inside, marble floors reflected displays of glittering timepieces, each perched atop velvet cushions. Strategically placed spotlights shone down on limited edition watches that cost more than some people's homes. Keanu wore a simple gray t-shirt, slightly rumpled at the hems, alongside a pair of faded jeans. A worn-out baseball cap shaded his face. Anyone who glanced his way might see a tall man with a relaxed bearing, but they wouldn't guess he was an internationally known actor with an impressive filmography. This morning, though, he had come in quietly, hoping just to browse. A moment after walking in, he paused at the main showcase. A particularly dazzling watch caught his eye, diamonds encircling the bezel, constructed from white gold so pure it almost glowed. A tiny plaque at the base suggested it was part of a 5-piece, ultra-exclusive run. Naturally, there was no obvious price tag, but that was the norm in places like Aram. If you had to ask, you probably couldn't afford it. A tall, slim employee in a finely tailored suit soon noticed Keanu. Everything about this man's stance indicated he'd done this job for years, learning to spot real clients from mere window shoppers. Approaching with a refined bearing, he took in Keanu's attire and formed an immediate judgment. "Welcome to Aram," he said in a measured tone. "May I help you find something, sir?" Keanu, gazed still on the gleaming watch, replied softly, "Actually, I'd like some details about this watch right here." He pointed to the center of the glass display. The employee's eyes followed the direction of his finger. Realizing it was the store's priciest piece, his brows lifted almost imperceptibly. "That model is rather special," he said, carefully selecting his words. "Fully encrusted with diamonds, crafted in 18-karat white gold, and produced by a highly renowned Swiss watchmaker. It's also extremely limited." His voice hardened subtly. "Are you sure you're interested in this one?" Keanu nodded. "Yes, I'd like to know more about its mechanics. What sets it apart?" A flicker of annoyance crossed the employee's features. Perhaps he'd hoped this customer would back down upon realizing the watch's obvious extravagance. "Well," he began, "it's fully automatic, meaning it winds itself using the movement of your wrist. The brand is quite prestigious, known for timepieces that can cost as much as a small home. In fact, this model alone is valued around $300,000. Several customers browsing the store overheard the amount and glanced over. Some recognized the figure as unimaginable, while others nodded, accustomed to such numbers. But everyone noticed the note of condescension in the employee's voice. Keanu, though, showed no visible reaction. He merely studied the watch as if trying to discern whether it was worth the hype. "That's interesting," he murmured. "Could I see it up close?" The employee pursed his lips as though debating. It's store policy not to remove certain pieces from the case unless a client has demonstrated they're a serious buyer, he explained, crossing his arms. Limited pieces like these generally only come out for private appointments. Keanu turned his gaze from the watch to the employee, his expression calm. "And what would I need to do to be considered a serious buyer in your eyes?" The man in the suit gave a short, polite laugh that bordered on scorn. Typically, customers who inquire about our exclusive lines do so by reference or prior arrangement. People who know precisely what they're looking for and who can afford it. He glanced down at Keanu's worn jeans and baseball cap. No offense intended, of course, but these are exceptionally high-value items. A quiet hush seemed to settle between them. Keanu stood his ground, posture relaxed, but the employee's words carried a pointed message. He did not believe this man in casual clothes was the right clientele for Aram. The actor considered explaining who he was, but something in him resisted. He preferred to let his curiosity speak for itself. "I appreciate your explanation," Keanu said eventually, "but I'd still like to see how it feels. You said it's automatic, right?" Irritation flickered again on the employee's face. This customer wasn't deterred. "Let me level with you, sir," he said in a subdued voice. "This watch sells for 300 grand. Most people simply aren't in that bracket. If you're simply curious, perhaps one of our lesser models is more suitable." Keanu's jaw tightened, but he kept his tone level. "Is that because of how I'm dressed? Or do you always assume your customers can't afford items?" Caught off guard, the employee faltered momentarily. Then he forced another practiced smile. "We're always mindful of our clients' time. Typically, a person ready to spend that sort of money comes in differently." Keanu exhaled, a flicker of disappointment crossing his eyes. "I see. Well, I don't want to argue. Could you just show me the watch for a moment? Or is that too difficult?" The employee's mouth tightened in frustration. "I'm sorry," he said, though it was evident he felt no real regret. "I believe you might be better suited elsewhere. Another store might have selections more in line with your preferences." For a heartbeat, Keanu studied him in silence. Then he nodded once. "All right," he said quietly. "I won't waste more of your time." He turned away, heading for the door. The employee lifted his chin, seemingly proud to have ended the conversation. Two other customers, who had been covertly watching the exchange, gave each other baffled looks. One of them recognized the man leaving. "Hey," a voice behind the employee said, a note of disbelief, "That's Keanu Reeves." Instantly, the employee stiffened. The moment that name escaped the onlooker's lips, everything shifted. Another bystander, an older gentleman who'd been admiring a mid-range watch, leaned closer and mumbled, "Wait, what did you say?" "Keanu Reeves." Several heads turned, eyes darting toward the exit where Keanu was just about to step through the glass doors. A few, more in the know, recognized the distinct posture and stoic expression. The employee who had turned Keanu away felt his pulse spike. His mind reeled. No, that can't be him. He wouldn't dress like that, would he? Yet a cold dread began to seep into his stomach. After all, Keanu Reeves was famous for an unassuming style, known for wearing casual clothes off-screen. The man in the suit tried to keep his composure, but a trickle of sweat formed at his temple. Behind him, the store manager, a middle-aged woman with a sharp business suit and a no-nonsense demeanor, approached with quick strides. "What's going on here?" she demanded in a hushed tone, noticing the tension. The bystander repeated, a bit louder, "That man who just left." That was Keanu Reeves. The manager's gaze snapped to the employee, silently demanding confirmation. He looked rattled, his arms dangling by his sides. I didn't realize it was him," he stuttered, his voice faltering. "He wasn't. He didn't say who he was." For a moment, no one else spoke. The manager's expression darkened with anger and concern. Everyone in the store knew that an encounter like this could become a public relations nightmare. If word got out that Aram had kicked out a globally beloved celebrity, it could tarnish their entire brand. Even more, the store prided itself on exclusivity, yes, but they also needed a sterling reputation among all potential clients. The manager inhaled sharply. "Go," she ordered the employee, pointing to the entrance. "Try to catch him before he leaves the block. Apologize. Do whatever you must, but fix this." In a burst of panic, the man nodded vigorously, pivoting on his polished shoes to hurry toward the door. He nearly collided with a well-dressed couple entering, who gave him startled looks as he pushed past them. Outside, the late-morning sun felt harsher as he scanned the sidewalk. Keanu was just rounding the corner. Without pausing to think about appearances, the employee jogged forward, weaving between pedestrians until he caught up to him by a parked car. "Mr. Reeves?" he called breathlessly, stopping a couple of steps behind. Keanu glanced over his shoulder, calm as ever, though a flicker of puzzlement crossed his features. "I'm sorry. I just wanted to say," the employee began, cheeks burning. "I had no idea who you were. I didn't mean to." Keanu let out a quiet sigh. "You didn't need to know my name to treat me kindly," he said. It wasn't an accusation, just a statement of fact. That calm manner, somehow, made the employee feel even worse. "I know," the man replied, voice tight with regret. "It's just, the store has policies. We see certain types of clients, and I misjudged you. It was incredibly unprofessional." Keanu regarded him evenly. Despite the tension, he seemed entirely in control of his emotions, as though he was used to these awkward encounters. "Everyone makes mistakes, but you went beyond policy. You presumed I wasn't worth your time because I looked casual." The employee flushed, recalling how he'd basically told Keanu to leave. "I'm so sorry. If you'd consider coming back." Keanu shook his head gently. "I appreciate the apology, but I won't be returning. I was curious about a watch, but not anymore." His gaze flicked toward the store's gilded sign visible down the street. "I don't want special treatment just because I'm recognized, you know?" A swirl of shame and panic churned inside the employee. He had not only embarrassed himself, but also risked humiliating the entire establishment. "Is there anything we can do to make it up to you? A private viewing, maybe, or—" Raising a palm, Keanu stopped him. "I understand your manager told you to fix this, but truly it's done. I'll find a watch elsewhere if I need one." He paused, eyeing the man's discomfort. "Let this be a lesson. You never really know who you're talking to." Those words hit like a punch to the gut. The employee swallowed hard, 1,000 excuses bouncing around in his head. But deep down, he knew it was his own prejudice that had led him to push away a polite, unassuming man. "I really am sorry," he managed. "Please forgive me." Keanu gave a half-smile that carried more disappointment than anger. "Take care," he said simply, then stepped off the curb, heading toward a waiting car. Within seconds, the door closed, and the car pulled away from the curb. The employee watched it merge with traffic, feeling a heavy sense of finality. No second chances, no last-minute redemption. The walk back to Aram felt painfully long. He replayed his earlier words, grimacing at how arrogant he must have sounded. By the time he stepped inside, it felt like the entire staff was staring, each face reflecting some mixture of curiosity and judgment. The store manager waited by the nearest glass case, arms folded, eyes narrowed. The silence in the store was suffocating. "Well?" she demanded in a clipped tone, not bothering with pleasantries. "How did it go? Did you manage to smooth this over?" He shook his head, shoulders slumping. "He refused. He doesn't want anything to do with us." He paused, unsure how much detail to share. "He said he'll just look elsewhere for a watch, if he wants one." A tight furrow appeared in her brow. The situation was worse than she'd imagined. Word could easily spread that Keanu Reeves had been made unwelcome in their boutique. "We'll discuss this after closing," the manager said icily. "For now, get back to work. Try not to alienate any more customers." For the remainder of the day, the employee went through the motions, greeting incoming visitors with forced politeness. But he was haunted by the memory of Keanu's disappointed gaze. The question that kept echoing in his mind was, why couldn't I have just been courteous from the start, to everyone, no matter what? Chapter 3 almost equals 700 words. Later that afternoon, as customers filtered in and out, the store manager couldn't hide her displeasure. Every time the door chimed, she tossed a wary glance at the employee, as if expecting yet another blunder. He tried to keep his expression neutral, but inside he was a wreck. Each new client's arrival felt like a reminder of his mistake. Meanwhile, word was spreading beyond the store's walls, fueled by modern gossip channels, social media, whispers among the city's elite, and even a few paparazzi who'd caught a glimpse of Keanu in that area. By evening, the rumor mill was churning out the story. A famous luxury watch boutique turned away none other than Keanu Reeves. Some recounted how the actor was brushed aside due to his casual look, while others embellished the tale, claiming insults had been hurled. Regardless of the exact details, the damage to Aram's reputation was beginning to take root. Several coworkers avoided speaking to the employee, not wanting to get entangled in the manager's wrath. A few, however, whispered words of empathy. "We know you didn't mean for that to happen." But even that small comfort did little to ease the tension. The employee himself felt a gnawing sense of guilt. He'd always believed that part of his job was weeding out mere window shoppers. But he'd never paused to consider whether this gatekeeping could cross into disrespect. When the store finally closed, the once grand space felt bleak. The manager gathered everyone for a short meeting near the main display, where the shimmering diamond watch still rested under the lights. She held up a slip of paper with hastily scribbled notes. "We've already received multiple inquiries about the incident," she informed them, her voice tight. "Some from local press, some from potential customers who heard rumors. This is unacceptable." She singled out the employee with a sharp stare. "You'll stay behind. We need to talk." The rest of the staff dispersed, relief evident in their hurried steps. The employee remained, feeling trapped between the display cases that had once seemed so majestic and now felt suffocating. The manager fixed him with a steely gaze. "Explain to me, in your own words, how you let this happen." He swallowed. I saw a man dressed in casual clothes. I assumed he was just curious and not serious about buying. I tried to guide him toward less expensive items, but he insisted on seeing the top-tier piece. I tried to discourage him, believing that it was beyond his means. He trailed off, shame flooding in. "Do you realize how foolish that is?" The manager snapped. "Keanu Reeves is one of the most humble celebrities out there, known for not flaunting his wealth, yet extremely capable of purchasing anything in this store." She paused, exhaling sharply. "This store's policy is not to discriminate based on appearances. And yet you made that exact mistake." The employee dropped his gaze, nodding. "I understand now. I truly do. I didn't let him see the watch because I presumed he couldn't afford it. I was condescending." The manager's eyes bored into him. "And now we're dealing with a public relations nightmare. People all over the city, and possibly beyond, are talking about how Aram turned away a respected figure. Our brand's entire ethos is about exclusivity, sure, but we've never condoned humiliating anyone." She glanced at the store's sign overhead, as though it, too, judged them. He steeled himself, forcing the words out. "I know I made a huge mistake. I apologize. If there's any way to fix this, I'll do it." She folded her arms. "You tried chasing after him, yes?" "Yes, but he wouldn't accept any apology or offer to return. He was disappointed, not just because of who he is, but because I treated him that way without even knowing him." A heavy silence fell. The manager drummed her fingers against the display case, the polished glass reflecting her stern features. "I'll speak to the owners," she said at last, "but I won't lie. We may have to issue a formal statement. And I'm not sure how they'll handle your position here." A knot twisted in his stomach. He'd worked here for years, prided himself on his product knowledge and ability to serve the wealthy clientele. Yet a single lapse in judgment had undone all that. "Understand," he said, voice barely above a whisper. "I'll accept whatever they decide." She studied him for a moment, perhaps recognizing genuine remorse. "We'll see. For now, go home. Don't speak to any reporters. Don't post anything on social media. Do nothing." Nodding, he turned to leave. The store's grand facade had never felt so oppressive. On the sidewalk outside, the day's last traces of sunlight were slipping away, leaving the city in a dim glow of streetlights and neon signs. Passing pedestrians seemed lost in their own worlds, but the employee felt like all eyes were on him. As he made his way home, he recalled Keanu's remark, "You shouldn't have to know who I am to treat me decently." That statement clung to him, more haunting than any scolding from the manager. For years, he'd prided himself on telling serious buyers from time wasters, but had he become arrogant in the process? Perhaps he'd lost sight of basic courtesy. Later that night, sleepless, He scrolled through social media, where rumors swirled about a famed watch store humiliating a beloved actor. He saw repeated mentions of how cool and polite Keanu was, how he rarely demanded VIP treatment, and how his only request was a simple courtesy extended to any customer. Guilt gnawed at him anew. I deserve this backlash, he whispered to the empty darkness of his room. Days passed, and the incident made headlines in local gossip columns. One tabloid wrote, "Lux store staff snubbed Keanu Reeves over his casual attire. Actor leaves empty-handed." Another website posted a short video clip captured by a customer's phone, revealing part of the exchange where the employee brushed Keanu off. While not explicitly rude, the condescending tone was evident. Comment sections lit up with criticism. Within Aram, morale dipped. Fewer visitors strolled in, and those who did occasionally made curious remarks about whether they, too, might be refused if they didn't look rich enough. The store's upper management scrambled to control the narrative, issuing a guarded statement that read, "Aram is committed to treating all clientele with the utmost respect. We regret any misunderstanding that may have occurred." But that vague disclaimer satisfied few people. The employee found himself assigned mundane tasks, cleaning displays, inventory checks, while other associates handled direct customer interactions. He was effectively benched. The manager refused to confirm if he still had a future at Aram. Tension shadowed him wherever he went, and he started to question everything about how he'd approach his job. Meanwhile, in a more unassuming part of town, Keanu Reeves walked into a modest watch shop called Time and Value. The place was cozy, with glass shelves that showed simpler, yet thoughtfully curated pieces. The store owner, an older man with kind eyes and a friendly smile, greeted him with a warm good afternoon. Keanu instantly sensed a different vibe. No stuffy atmosphere, no suspicious stares. "Looking for anything in particular?" the shop owner asked, noticing Keanu's eyes drawn to a vintage pocket watch. Keanu picked it up with care, admiring the old-fashioned elegance. "Actually, yes," he said softly. "I like something meaningful, not just expensive. Maybe a piece with a good story behind it." The owner nodded enthusiastically. We specialize in that. Price can say a lot, but a watch's history often says more." He handed over another watch, an unassuming one with subtle engravings on its back. This belonged to a local craftsman who believed in simpler living. Each tick, each gear, is meant to remind the wearer that time is precious, but it's not about flaunting. It's about cherishing moments. Keanu smiled, a hint of contentment in his eyes. "That's exactly the sentiment I'm after." They chatted for a while. The owner spoke passionately about various watchmakers who poured heart and soul into their craft. He told stories of families passing these small treasures from one generation to the next, building memories that overshadowed any price tag. Keanu listened intently, occasionally slipping in a small question or remark. Not once did the owner pry about whether the actor could afford something. Finally, Keanu decided on modest, elegantly crafted watch with a simple face and a discreet engraving that read Tempest Fugit. The shop owner offered him a fair price, well below anything that might be found in an ultra-luxe boutique. The actor smiled, pulling out his wallet without ceremony. It was done. The entire exchange resonated with warmth and respect. As Keanu left, he patted the watch in his pocket, reminding himself how different it felt to be treated like a human being rather than a walking wallet. Back at Aram, the store manager heard rumors of Keanu's quiet purchase elsewhere, how he'd found exactly what he wanted in a humble shop. She called a meeting with the staff, her tone somber. "He went somewhere else, as expected," she said, scanning their faces. "Word on the street is he found a watch more in line with his values. And we lost not just a sale, but our dignity in the process." She paused to let that sink in. "Our store's brand is in question. People are calling us snobs and elitists." The employees shifted uncomfortably. It was one thing to be exclusive, but quite another to be widely viewed as humiliating to those who didn't look the part. The manager didn't hold back. "The owners have demanded swift changes. We cannot continue with an attitude that drives people away, especially someone so widely admired. We must rebuild trust, or at least salvage what we can. The employee at the heart of the fiasco sat to one side, staring at his hands. He heard about Keanu's new watch purchase as well. Some articles even praised the actor for supporting a small local business. The employee realized how thoroughly he'd misread the situation. In his desire to weed out unserious shoppers, he'd alienated a valuable human being. And in the process, he'd overshadowed all the brand's intended prestige with a single moment of condescension. Later that evening, as he locked up the storefront, he paused by the case that held the $300,000 watch. It glittered under the subdued lighting, a silent reminder of the outcome that could have been. If he'd simply shown kindness and respect, the story might have played out entirely differently. Maybe Keanu would have decided to buy, or maybe not, but the store would have kept its integrity intact. Exhaling a heavy breath, the employee turned away, flicking off the display lights. Tomorrow, he knew, changes were coming. The manager had hinted at staff retraining, new guidelines about customer engagement, and possibly even disciplinary actions for him. Whatever the outcome, he couldn't shake the lesson lodged deep in his heart. A week later, the employee sat in the manager's office, tension knotting his shoulders. The store had started implementing mandatory training sessions on customer respect and inclusion. They circulated an internal memo that read, in part, "Aram aspires to serve everyone with courtesy, regardless of appearance, race, or economic status. We measure ourselves by how we treat all guests." The manager set down a folder on her desk. "I've received instructions from the owners," she began. "We'll be hosting a formal press event next month to highlight our new approach. They're rethinking how we do business, even discussing new brand ambassadors to show a friendlier side. Unfortunately for you, they want a staff shakeup." His heart pounded. "Does that mean I'm fired?" She hesitated, eyes scanning him. "No, not outright. They want to give you a second chance, under conditions. You'll undergo extra training, be placed on probation for a month, and you'll start at a lower tier of commission. If your attitude or performance doesn't improve significantly, you'll be let go." Relief and dread warred within him. He nodded, swallowing back a surge of mixed feelings. "I understand. Thank you for the second chance," he whispered, sincerity lacing his words. The manager clasped her hands together on the desk. "I do believe you've learned something from this fiasco. But I'll be honest, the brand took a hit. We still get messages from people demanding an apology to Keanu Reeves or vowing never to shop here. We have uphill work to do, and you must prove yourself." He gave a solemn nod. "I intend to." 2 days later, the store was quieter than usual. Some employees guessed it was due to the negative press, while others blamed seasonal fluctuations. Still, the reduced foot traffic gave the employee time to reflect. He found himself imagining if Keanu Reeves walked in again. Would he greet him with an apology right at the door? Or would he calmly let him browse, no questions asked? The answer, he realized, was obvious now. In the following weeks, he practiced a new approach. If a customer walked in wearing an old t-shirt or a brand-name suit, he treated them exactly the same. He offered genuine greetings, asked about their interests, and carefully explained watch features without judgment. One afternoon, an older lady in a threadbare sweater came in, admiring a modest watch. The employee showed her every possible angle, explaining how it was water-resistant and had a timeless design. Though she hesitated over the price, she ultimately decided to buy. Before leaving, she admitted she'd felt intimidated entering such a fancy store, but his warm approach changed her mind. That sale, while not massive, felt more rewarding than any high-commission transaction he'd ever done. It symbolized a shift in attitude, away from the arrogance that had nearly cost him his job. Each day, the employee thought about how quickly he'd dismiss Keanu Reeves for not looking right. He realized that in a city brimming with wealth, sometimes real value comes wrapped in humility, not a flashy suit. Meanwhile, social media chatter about Keanu's experience at Aram slowly died down, replaced by new celebrity gossip. But the lesson remained. The brand's owners launched a subtle marketing campaign, emphasizing timeless hospitality and everyone deserves the gift of time. It was a not-so-subtle nod to the fiasco, and possibly an attempt to reframe their public image. Some longtime customers praised the newfound warmth in the store. Others remained skeptical, waiting to see if it was genuine or just window dressing. One early morning, a courier arrived with a small package addressed to the manager. She opened it to find a short, typed letter in a plain cardboard box. Inside was a standard, minimalist watch with no fancy branding. The letter read, "I hope you find as much value in treating people right as I did in finding the right watch for myself. Life is short. Measure it with kindness. Codex rodzinny." A hush fell over the staff as the manager read it aloud. The employee who had snubbed Keanu stood by, mouth slightly open. The irony was clear. The watch wasn't extravagant, but its meaning was priceless. In that moment, the entire staff recognized the gap between superficial luxury and genuine human respect. No one said a word as the manager carefully lifted the watch, a hint of moisture in her eyes. Perhaps it was a final coda from a man who believed in humility even in the face of wealth. Or maybe it was a gentle reminder that every tick of the clock was a chance to do better. The employee felt a lump in his throat. This simple gesture from Keanu Reeves reinforced everything he'd learned in the wake of that humiliating encounter. That afternoon, the store displayed the watch in a small corner of their window, accompanied by a short quote about respect and empathy. Some passers-by stopped to read, perplexed by the uncharacteristically modest item for such a lavish boutique. But for Aram, and especially for one humbled employee, it was a beacon of transformation, a symbol of how easy it is to lose sight of what truly matters and how vital it is to find it again. The ordeal at Aram Watch Store became a turning point for everyone involved. Keanu Reeves entered as a man of quiet curiosity, only to face an employee's prejudice, and left without a purchase but with a powerful statement in his wake. Word quickly spread, sparking discussions on how we judge people based on appearances and forget the dignity every individual deserves. For the employee, it was a hard lesson in humility. One moment of casual dismissal nearly cost him his career, yet offered a rare chance to reassess his values. Over time, he realized that genuine courtesy should be a reflex, not a choice triggered by outward signs of wealth. In the end, he found renewed purpose in treating each client with openness, discovering that respect fosters its own brand of luxury. Meanwhile, Aram underwent changes that resonated across its high-end facade, recognizing that exclusivity must be balanced with compassion. The store shifted its focus from merely selling expensive items to offering an inviting, respectful space for all. Though it took time and sincere effort, they gradually rebuilt their image. And in an unexpected twist, Keanu Reeves himself gave them a graceful nudge toward redemption. A simple watch, a brief note, and an understated reminder that life's most valuable moments can't be measured in carats or price tags. Ultimately, this episode underscored a vital truth. Every person, no matter how casually dressed, is worthy of respect. What truly sets us apart is not our attire or net worth, but our capacity to empathize and offer kindness without strings attached. In a world obsessed with surface-level impressions, a single act of genuine courtesy can stand as the finest accessory of all.